After hearing 800 tales of vendettas within the realm, I cannot shake the feeling that someone intends to annihilate my entire family. On the very first day of my marriage into the Marquise, I hastily arranged for 50 elite bodyguards from my maternal home to secure the residence. Just as my scheming concubine, intent on poisoning me to seize my inheritance, poured the deadly substance into the soup, my poison testing maid apprehended her on the spot. Enraged, she attempted to take her own life by biting her tongue. Within the first month of my entry into the estate, I meticulously investigated the ancestry of every servant within the household. Even the spies dispatched from the neighboring prince's residence were uncovered by me, leaving my scheming aunt-in-law, who sought to frame me for treachery, confined to her bed in fury. Thus, during my 3 years at the Marquise, I acted with resolute decisiveness, leaving no room for leniency and calculated against all those who plotted against me. Until the return of the novel's heroine, the Marquise cherished first love, to the capital. With tears like falling pear blossoms, she dragged me to the ancestral hall, attempting to stage a poignant drama in which I supposedly forced her to collide with a pillar, hoping this would prompt the Marquise to cast me aside. However, as she pulled me towards the pillar, her previously delicate expression contorted grotesquely. "Surely, you must be deranged. Which family's ancestral hall has pillars cushioned with cotton?" 1. The piercing scream of Lu Fui was akin to casting a spell upon the solemn and reverent Gu family ancestral hall. Her face was adorned with unfallen tears, and her expression resembled that of someone who had just encountered a ghost, reminiscent of a poorly executed opera performance. I calmly extracted my hand from her painful grip. "Miss Lu, please maintain your composure in public." It seemed she did not hear me, as she reached out with a trembling hand to touch the large crimson pillar, exquisitely wrapped in silk and filled with thick cotton. It was soft. She stood there, frozen, repeatedly murmuring, "How can cotton be cotton?" I understood that this was beyond her comprehension. In the script she envisioned, she would clutch my arm, prompting me to give her a shove, causing her fragile form to collide with the hard pillar, blood oozing from her temple as she weakly collapsed into the arms of Lord Gu Yanzhao upon his arrival, while I would be cast as the envious and malevolent woman. Unfortunately for her, I prided myself on my ability to anticipate danger. In a place like the ancestral hall, dark and solid, accidents were prone to occur. How could I possibly neglect safety measures? "Madam." "Fui." Just as I pondered this, Gu Yanzhao burst in like a gust of wind. His gaze immediately fell upon the swaying Lu Fui, and he rushed forward to steady her. His voice filled with concern. "Fui, are you alright? Did she bully you again?" His accusatory tone cut through the air like a knife directed at me. Lu Fui finally seemed to regain her senses, her tears spilling forth like beads from a broken string as she pointed at me, struggling for breath. "Yanzhao, she. She stammered for what felt like an eternity without forming a complete sentence. Surely she could not say. I intended to crash into the pillar to frame her, only to discover it was soft, for uttering such a statement would render her the one with a fractured mind. Sighing, I stepped forward with an expression of just the right amount of concern and innocence. "My lord, please do not fret. Miss Lu has just returned to the capital and may not be accustomed to the environment." She was speaking to me when suddenly her legs gave way. I saw she was about to lean against the pillar, fearing she might hurt herself, considering how solid it is. As I spoke, I gently patted the cotton-wrapped pillar, producing a muffled sound. Thus, I took the liberty of ensuring that all sharp corners and edges in the estate were padded. I am rather clumsy, and should I accidentally injure myself one day, who would my parents seek for justice? I blinked innocently, feigning that all my actions were in my own best interest. Gu Yanzhao's expression became momentarily frozen. He glanced between the tear-streaked Lu Fui and the row of round pillars, each swathed in vibrant silk, as well as the sharp corners of the ancestral tablet table, and even the threshold, which was laid with thick carpeting. The entire ancestral hall had been transformed by me into a semblance of a cozy nursery. Lu Fui's sobs caught in her throat, as if someone had grasped her by the neck. Gu Yanzhao opened his mouth, finally managing to utter a few words through gritted teeth. "Xinjiwa, you are truly something." I took it as a compliment. 2. Lu Fui fell ill. It was said that she was startled, trembling at the slightest breeze and deterring at the sight of pillars. Gu Yanzhao was deeply concerned and promptly allocated the finest listening rain pavilion in the entire marquise for her to reside in, moving valuable items in like a flowing stream. The entire estate was watching, anticipating a reaction from me, the principal wife. Yet, I was preoccupied. I was directing my 50 loyal guards in fortifying the silver railings around the pond adjacent to the listening rain pavilion. Madam, the pond is only knee-deep. It's not deep enough to drown anyone, said the head of the guard, Ada, with a straightforward expression. Not deep enough to drown. But what if Miss Lu, in a moment of despair, plunges in and strikes her head against the stones at the bottom? What if she slips? What if someone pushes her? I countered with a barrage of questions. Ada fell silent, quietly urging the workers to hasten their efforts. Lu Fui's personal maid approached, inviting me to visit her. As I reached the courtyard entrance, I gazed at the glaring silver railings, unsure of where to place my feet. Madam Shen, our young lady requests your presence. Upon my arrival, I found Lu Fui reclining languidly on a beauty couch, clad in gossamer garments that revealed her fair neck and a glimpse of collarbone. Her face imbued with a sickly flush. Gu Yanzhao sat beside her, personally feeding her medicine. It was a picturesque scene of romantic affection. Noticing my entrance, Lu Fui feebly addressed me. Sister, I am unwell and cannot pay my respects. I have heard that you have arranged railings for the pond in my courtyard. I am truly taken aback. The last 4 words were nearly ground out through clenched teeth. I offered a gentle smile. It is only right. Your health is fragile. And should you fall in, it would break Lord Gu's heart. By the way, I heard you were alarmed, so I specifically sought remedies to soothe your spirit. I clapped my hands, and 2 robust matronly figures brought in a ceramic urn, towering half a person's height. This contains a soothing concoction, brewed with 108 precious herbs over 7 days and nights, using the purest water. I personally oversaw the preparation. It is absolutely clean. Drink 3 bowls a day, and you will be guaranteed recovery. Lu Fui's complexion paled. Gu Yanzhao furrowed his brow. This is nonsense. Who drinks medicine like that? Not nonsense at all, I replied earnestly. My family has a remedy. If one is startled, it indicates their spirit has fled, and potent medicine is needed to call it back. This urn of broth is intended to retrieve Miss Lu's spirit. As I lifted the lid, an overpowering, pungent aroma instantly filled the room. Lu Fui promptly vomited. It was no act. She truly retched, expelling the bird's nest porridge she had consumed that morning. Gu Yanzhao hurriedly patted her back, his gaze directed at me with an intensity that seemed to wish to consume me alive. Shinjiwa, enough. My lord. I am merely acting in Miss Lu's best interest, I asserted with sincerity. You see, she has expelled her ill fortune, which proves my remedy's efficacy. Gu Yanzhao was left speechless. As Lu Fui regained her composure, she propped herself up, trembling as she pointed at me. Yanzhao, send her away. I do not wish to see her, I do not. Before she could finish, I stepped back, feigning deep regret. Since Miss Lu is unwell, I shall take my leave. Please do take care of yourself, and remember to drink the broth on time. With that, I turned to depart, modestly concealing my accomplishments. As I reached the door, I could still hear Lu Fui's frantic cries and Gu Yanzhao's restrained attempts at comfort. My spirits lifted. I looked forward to an extra bowl of rice that evening. 3. After a few days of tranquility, Lu Fui resumed her antics. She began to win over the servants of the marquise. The small kitchen of the listening rain pavilion wafted enticing aromas of various novel dishes daily, be it hibiscus chicken slices or honey-glazed fire cubes. She frequently bestowed gifts upon the servants, rewarding one with a hairpin one day and another with fine fabric the next, all while displaying gentle concern and warmth, quickly garnering a faction of loyal supporters. The sentiment within the estate began to shift. Everyone spoke of Lu Fui's gentleness and kindness, comparing her to a bodhisattva, while I, the principal wife, who often wore a stern expression and scrutinized their ancestral backgrounds, was perceived as a living embodiment of a tyrannical judge. My maidservant, Chuanhe, was infuriated. Madam, it seems Lu Fui aims to undermine you. You cannot allow her to continue like this. I was engrossed in reviewing the newly delivered accounts, not lifting my head. What is the rush? Let her prance about. The higher she leaps, the harder she will fall. Soon, the opportunity presented itself. It was once again time to have seasonal garments tailored for the household. In previous years, I had taken charge of this, yet this year, Lu Fui eagerly volunteered. Before Gu Yanzhao and a host of stewards, she proclaimed that I had worked hard and she wished to alleviate my burdens. Her words flowed flawlessly, her demeanor humble, prompting Gu Yanzhao to readily agree and praise her for her virtue. What could I say? I could only graciously hand over the responsibilities and authority. Upon assuming her role as steward, the first decision Lu Fui made was to overturn all the fabrics and designs I had previously selected, opting instead for her own choices. The fabric she chose is the most fashionable shimmering brocade in the capital, appearing splendid and vibrant at first glance. However, it is nothing more than a gilded facade, utterly unsuitable for wear, destined to become worthless after a single wash. More importantly, the supplier of this batch of cloth is a distant relative of the Lu family, aiming to turn the purchases of the Marquis's household into a lucrative venture for her clan. Chuanhe, in a state of distress, exclaimed, "Madam, what shall we do? The annual expenses of the household are no trifling matter. If she gains control, will the Marquis's estate not fall into the hands of the Lu family? Do not fret. Merely observe," I replied, taking a sip of tea with an air of calm. 3 days later, when the new garments were distributed, discontent echoed throughout the manor. Those servants who had received minor favors from Lu Fui had expected to don exquisite fabrics, only to find that the material was as thin as paper, easily torn with the slightest force. How are we to wear these? A gust of wind will surely rend them to shreds. They are less durable than last year's old clothes. They wondered how someone who appeared so gentle could be so unreliable in her dealings. Lu Fui's once stellar reputation suffered a severe blow overnight. But this was not the end of it. When the end-of-month accounting day arrived, the steward's face drained of color as he presented the ledger. "My lord, the expenditures for this month under Madam's procurement have exceeded the usual amount by more than threefold." Gu Yanzhao's expression darkened immediately. Lu Fui stood nearby, her face ashen, clutching her handkerchief as if it might disintegrate in her grasp. "Yanzhao, I did not foresee this. I merely wished for everyone to dress decently. That shimmering brocade is the finest material available." I spoke slowly. "Miss Lu, managing procurement is not akin to a leisurely stroll in the marketplace, solely focused on aesthetics. With hundreds relying on us for their sustenance, every aspect, clothing, food, shelter, requires expertise. The fabric you selected is ostentatious yet impractical, overpriced and prone to damage after a single wash. We effectively spent 3 times the price for a collection of disposable garments." I paused, casting a glance at Gu Yanzhao. "My lord, where should the 30,000 taels of overspending be sourced from? Public funds or the responsibility of the individual in charge?" Lu Fui's tears began anew. "Sister, I did not intend for this. I am only just learning to manage. Please assist me this once." She gazed at me with a pitiful expression, then turned to Gu Yanzhao. His heart softened, brow furrowing as he seemed ready to intercede on her behalf. I preempted him, wearing an expression of conflict. "Sister, it is not that I wish to deny you. However, in my 3 years as a mistress of the Marquis's estate, I have diligently managed our household and never encountered such a blunder. Now, you arrive and incur a loss of 30,000 taels. If I were to cover this, what would the servants think? They would believe that as long as they appease you, no matter how great their transgressions, someone will always shield them. This precedent I cannot set." My words elevated personal grievances to a matter of governance. Gu Yanzhao was rendered speechless, unable to disrupt the established order of the Marquis's household for the sake of one woman. Ultimately, the 30,000 taels had to come from Lu Fui's personal funds. It was rumored she pawned her dowry given by her mother to barely scrape it together. After this incident, no one in the household dared to underestimate me, the living embodiment of authority, nor did they place their faith in Lu Fui, the perceived paragon of virtue. Lu Fui, left in a state of disarray, fell ill for an extended period. When she re-emerged, she had lost considerable weight, and the glances she cast my way were akin to daggers laced with venom. I understood she was preparing to strike back. According to the plot of the novel The Glamour of the Capital, the next sequence would culminate in a dramatic climax, the poisoning of the matriarch and framing of the legitimate wife. My mother-in-law, the venerable lady of Jinyuan, Gu Yanzhao's mother, devoted her life to piety, and remained aloof from worldly affairs. Yet, her standing in the Marquis's household was unparalleled. With a mere word, she could command Gu Yanzhao to divorce me. Lu Fui, scheming, began to visit the old lady daily, attending to her needs with great diligence, massaging her legs and shoulders, winning her favor with every gesture. Gu Yanzhao, observing this, grew increasingly dissatisfied with me. Look at Fui, and then at you, both women of the Marquis's household. She is cultured and dutiful, while you seem only capable of fortifying doors and windows. I chose to ignore his remarks. I was in the process of saving his entire family, while he, with his romantic notions, understood nothing. Meanwhile, I was not idle. Citing the old lady's recent frailty and need for rest, I replaced every servant in her courtyard, from the sweepers to the cooks responsible for medicinal cuisine. With my own people, I claimed my staff were nimble and meticulous, better suited to care for the old lady. Delighted by the tranquility, the old lady was content. And though Gu Yanzhao harbored grievances, filial piety prevailed, preventing him from voicing dissent. Lu Fui's network of spies was thus quietly dismantled by my hand. Her attempts to tamper with the old lady's food were nothing but a pipe dream. Soon enough, her impatience got the better of her. One day, she personally delivered a bowl of ginseng soup to the old lady, claiming it had been simmered in her small kitchen for a day and night. The most nourishing of concoctions. As soon as she stepped inside, my confidant, Nurse Zhang, found an excuse to substitute the bowl of soup with another. Upon testing it in my courtyard, we discovered it had indeed been laced with a slow-acting poison. A subtle toxin, it would not be fatal in small doses, but would leave one weak and listless, and long-term use would render even the divine powerless to save. Moreover, it was exceedingly difficult to detect. A nefarious concoction from the palace. Lu Fui had truly invested heavily in her scheme. As I gazed at the faint gray-black residue on the testing needle, I could not help but smile. The fish had taken the bait. The following day, the old lady fell ill. The symptoms mirrored those of poisoning. The household was thrown into chaos, with Gu Yanzhao frantic, seeking the imperial physician, who could find no explanation, merely attributing it to overexertion and the need for rest. Lu Fui's moment had arrived. She stumbled upon a small sachet at the foot of the old lady's bed, containing the remnants of the very poison. The fabric and embroidery of the sachet mirrored a dress I had worn just days prior. With both witness and material evidence at hand, Gu Yanzhao stormed into my courtyard, his eyes ablaze. "Shun Jiwa, how wicked your heart is! Fui dutifully cares for her mother, yet out of jealousy, you would poison her." Lu Fui trailed behind him, weeping inconsolably. "Yanzhao, do not blame my sister. She could not have intended this. She was merely confused in the moment." I regarded their performance with an unperturbed heart, even suppressing a chuckle. On what grounds did the Marquis accuse me? The evidence was clear. "Was this sachet not yours?" Gu Yanzhao hurled it at my feet. "It is mine," I admitted without hesitation, "but that does not prove I administered the poison. Perhaps someone stole my sachet, hoping to frame me?" At this point, he could not contain his rage. Enough with the evasion. Bring the mistress to the ancestral hall for punishment. A flicker of triumph danced in Lu Fui's eyes. The ancestral hall. Punishment. If I were to be restrained upon the long bench and whipped, regardless of the final truth, my dignity as the Marquis's wife would be utterly shattered. At that moment, she would graciously plead for my mercy, and Gu Yanzhao would only grow to love her more while despising me further. Her calculations were astute. Unfortunately, she had overlooked one detail. As two matrons escorted me toward the ancestral hall, Lu Fui and Gu Yanzhao followed closely behind. Before we reached our destination, Nurse Zhang rushed in, flustered. "My lord, it is dire. The old lady, she..." Gu Yanzhao's countenance shifted. "What has happened to mother?" "The old lady has awakened. She says she has something to say." We immediately changed direction, hurrying to the old lady's quarters. Upon entering, we found the old lady, who should have been in a deep coma, sitting upright and alert on her bed, holding a steaming bowl of millet porridge. She glanced at us, her eyelids barely lifting, finishing the last spoonful of porridge before placing the bowl down. Gu Yanzhao was taken aback. "Mother, you are not..." Finally, the old lady raised her gaze, her icy stare landing on Lu Fui. "I am not what?" Wasn't she supposed to be on the brink of death? Allowing certain individuals the opportunity to stage a splendid act of framing and deceit. Lu Fui's face turned as pale as a sheet. The old lady paid her no mind, instead turning to me and beckoning, "Jiue, come here." I obediently approached. The old lady grasped my hand, patting it gently, then retrieved another identical sachet from beneath her pillow. She handed it to Gu Yanzhao, saying, "Examine this closely." Gu Yanzhao accepted it, opened it, and his countenance changed dramatically. Inside was not the dregs of medicine, but a small note. The note bore Lu Fui's handwriting, detailing from which black market apothecary she procured the drug, how much she paid, and how she planned to administer it in increments into the ginseng soup. The evidence was as solid as a rock. Lu Fui's legs gave way, and she collapsed to the ground. "No, I am not the one framing her. It is Shen Jiue who is framing me," she shrieked, pointing frantically at me. The old lady let out a cold laugh. "Frame you? Jiue has long since informed me of your little schemes. Did you think the ginseng soup you replaced ended up in whose belly? I had Mama Zhang feed it to the guard dog at your courtyard's entrance. Hasn't that dog been lethargic and weak these past few days?" Lu Fui's lips trembled, and she could utter not a single word. The old lady finally turned her gaze to Gu Yanzhao, her eyes filled with disappointment. "Yanzhao, I once believed you were merely blinded by beauty, but I never anticipated you could be this foolish. You cannot discern right from wrong, and you are willing to resort to family punishment against your own lawful wife for the sake of an outsider." She paused, picking up 2 tea bowls from the table, one offering it to Lu Fui, and the other pushing towards me. "I have here 2 bowls of tea. One is the calming brew prescribed by the physician earlier, while the other is infused with the dregs from your ginseng soup." The old lady fixed her gaze on Gu Yanzhao, enunciating each word with precision. "Now, as a mother, I present you with one final opportunity. Choose which of these 2 shall drink which bowl." The air in the room felt as though it had been seized by an invisible hand, laden with an oppressive weight. Gu Yanzhao's face fluctuated between pale and green, a spectacle akin to a dye shop in chaos. He glanced at me, then at Lu Fui, who lay crumpled and helpless on the floor. His lips moved, but no words emerged. Lu Fui, in a state of despair, reached out to grasp the hem of his robe, her voice quivering uncontrollably. "Yanzhao, save me. I do not wish to die." I stood quietly to the side, feeling like an outsider. A choice of this magnitude tests the very heart of man. Gu Yanzhao closed his eyes, and when he reopened them, he made his decision. Instead of approaching either bowl of tea, he knelt before the old lady, exclaiming, "Mother, all of this is my fault. It is I who misjudged character and invited a wolf into our midst. Fui is merely confused in this moment. I beseech you to spare her life. I am willing to drink this poison tea in her stead." His declaration was noble and heartfelt. Lu Fui's eyes sparkled with a wild joy. I internally scoffed. Behold, this is what men are. In the final moment, he still chose not his legally wedded wife, but to exchange his life for that of his beloved. Truly, a moving spectacle. The last vestige of warmth vanished from the old lady's face. She did not look at Gu Yanzhao but fixed her gaze on Lu Fui, speaking slowly. "Did you hear that? He is willing to die for you. Are you not feeling proud, thinking you found a man who would risk his life for you?" Lu Fui, taken aback by the question, instinctively nodded. With a sharp crack, a resounding slap echoed throughout the room. It was Mama Zhang, who had somehow positioned herself before Lu Fui. The force of the blow sent Lu Fui's head snapping to the side, blood seeping from the corner of her mouth. "Shameless wretch."
Mama Zhang spat.
Lu Fui was stunned, and Gu Yanzhao was equally bewildered. "Mother!" he shouted in anger. The old lady finally turned her gaze towards him, her expression one of profound disappointment. "Did you truly believe I would poison her? The Gu family is a venerable lineage, not a den of brigands that takes lives so lightly. Did you think I genuinely wished to compel you to make a choice? I merely wanted you to see for yourself the sort of person you have chosen." As she spoke, she raised the bowl of so-called poison tea and drank it down in one go. Then, she slammed the empty bowl onto the table with force. This bowl of tea, like the one given to Jiue, was merely ordinary pre-arranged Longjing tea. From beginning to end, it had all been a ruse, a ploy to expose Lu Fui's true nature while testing Gu Yanzhao's sincerity. Unfortunately, he had botched his performance. Gu Yanzhao's expression froze entirely, resembling a statue, kneeling there without moving. Lu Fui finally comprehended. She was not dead, but her situation was far worse. All her facades and schemes had been stripped bare, discarded on the ground for all to trample.
Come in.
The old lady's voice was icy. Take Miss Lu to the Jing'an Hall in the west of the city for a period of reflection. Without my command, she is forbidden from stepping outside for life. The Jing'an Hall was a place in the capital designated for the confinement of noble women who had erred. Entering it meant being disowned by one's family. A life irrevocably ruined. Lu Fui let out a piercing scream, scrambling towards Gu Yanzhao. Yanzhao, save me. I do not wish to go. Yanzhao. Two burly matrons entered, taking her by the arms and dragging her out. Gu Yanzhao remained on his knees, motionless and silent. Lu Fui's cries gradually faded into the distance until they were no more. The room was left in a deathly silence. After a long while, Gu Yanzhao finally raised his head. He did not look at the old lady but at me, his beautiful peach blossom eyes devoid of their usual warmth, replaced instead by a chilling hatred. Shen Jiyue, you have won. You have driven Fui away. Are you satisfied? I met his gaze with calm resolve. My lord, I am merely acting in self-preservation. Self-preservation? He scoffed, rising from the ground. I see you are relishing this. Using such despicable means to ruin Fui's life. This is the kind of principle the Shen family has instilled in you? My heart sank momentarily. The old lady could no longer contain herself, slamming her hand on the table. Nonsense. Do you not yet understand your error? Had it not been for Jiyue's vigilance, it would be I lying unconscious in bed. Gu Yanzhao held his head high, refusing to speak, his eyes filled with resentment directed at me. I understood then that between us, it was over. After Lu Fui was taken away, the Fo Fu became much quieter. The old lady, possibly heartbroken over Gu Yanzhao, moved to the Pu Tuo temple in the outskirts of the capital the following day, claiming she needed to devote herself to prayer. The authority over the household affairs was returned to me. My first act was to seal up the Tingyu pavilion, transferring every precious item within to the storeroom to gather dust. Subsequently, I found a reason to sell off a batch of those servants who had once fawned over Lu Fui. Setting an example had proven effective. The entire Hofu experienced a cleansing of its atmosphere, and no one dared to gossip in my presence anymore. Gu Yanzhao and I fell into a complete freeze. He moved to the outer courtyard to study, and aside from necessary encounters, we exchanged not a single word. The look in his eyes when he regarded me was akin to that of a sworn enemy. I remained unfazed. A man may betray you, but power will not. As long as I held the Vofu firmly in my grasp, no one could touch me. One day, as I was reviewing the year-end harvest from the estate, Chuanha rushed in, breathless. Madam, it is terrible. The Lord has brought Lu Fui back from the Jing'an Hall. My pen froze mid-stroke, ink blurring into an unsightly blot on the rice paper. When did this happen? Just now. I heard that Lu Fui fell ill with a cold while in reflection at the Jing'an Hall, suffering from a high fever that would not subside. Upon hearing the news, the Lord personally led a team to storm in and rescue her. She is now being settled in a villa in the southern part of the city. I set down my pen and slowly rose. What a convenient illness. Lu Fui is akin to an indomitable cockroach, displaying an extraordinary tenacity for life. This is merely another tactic she employs to elicit sympathy. Gu Yanzhao, fully aware of the ruse, nonetheless plunged headlong into the trap. Prepare the carriage, I commanded coldly. Chuanha hesitated momentarily. Madam, where are you going?
To the southern villa.
To pay a visit to the gravely ill Miss Lu. I am curious to see what performance she intends to put on this time. The carriage halted at the entrance of the villa, where the guards attempted to stop me, but the 50 assassins I had brought with me stood resolutely, rendering them mute. I strode into the courtyard unimpeded. Before I could enter the room, I heard Gu Yanzhao's gentle voice offering comfort from within. Fui, do not be afraid. I am here, and no one can harm you now. Then, I heard Lu Fui's weak sobs. Yanzhao, I am useless. I should not have returned. My sister despises me so. I should have anticipated this. I pushed open the door. The two occupants turned to face me simultaneously. Gu Yanzhao's countenance instantly clouded with frost. What are you doing here? Lu Fui shrank further into his embrace, resembling a frightened little rabbit. I surveyed the surroundings. The villa was modest yet exquisitely arranged. The air suffused with the scent of expensive incense and medicinal brews. I came to see Miss Lu. I have heard she is near death, and as her sister, I ought to pay my final respects, I said in a neutral tone. Lu Fui's face paled. Gu Yanzhao rebuked. Shun Jiyue. Do not go too far. Too far? I smiled. My lord, you have privately brought back a sinner punished by the family and housed her in your villa. If this were to become public knowledge, it would bring shame upon the entire Zhenyuan Hofu, who is truly overstepping. Fui is gravely ill. I cannot stand by and watch her die.
Gu Yanzhao exclaimed. Oh,
Is that so? I approached the bedside, looking down at Lu Fui. She lay there, her complexion flushed, lips cracked, clearly suffering from a serious illness. I reached out to touch her forehead. It was burning. She truly has a fever, I remarked, turning to Gu Yanzhao. Have you summoned a physician?
yes.
They said it was due to a cold and evil energy attacking her heart. She needs proper rest, he replied.
Is that so?
I withdrew my hand, retrieving a small porcelain vial from my sleeve, extracting a black pill. I possess a family heirloom, 100-herb pill, effective against various ailments. While I cannot guarantee it can bring one back from the brink of death, it should suffice to reduce a fever. I held the pill to Lu Fui's lips. Miss Lu, open your mouth. Lu Fui gazed at the dark pill in terror, shaking her head vigorously as she recoiled into Gu Yanzhao's arms. No, I won't eat it.
Yanzhao, I am afraid.
Gu Yanzhao forcefully pried my hand open, causing the pill to fall to the ground and roll into a corner.
Shen Jiyue.
What trickery are you attempting? Do you wish to poison Fui? My lord, this is a precious remedy, I said languidly. This pill is worth its weight in gold. My father risked his life and traversed the world to acquire just 3 of them. I am loath to consume it myself. I gazed at them, my smile laden with implications. Since Miss Lu refuses to take it, then so be it. However, I must remind you, my lord, some illnesses cannot be feigned, yet others can be induced through consumption. For example, in the southern regions, there exists a peculiar fungus known as crimson tears. When crushed and mixed into food, it induces a high fever and feeble pulse, mimicking severe illness. Yet once the fungus is ceased, recovery is swift. Lu Fui's body stiffened. Gu Yanzhao's expression shifted. I walked to the corner, retrieved the pill, dusted off the residue, and returned it to the vial. This 100-herb pill can counteract all poisons, including that of crimson tears. I looked at Gu Yanzhao, enunciating each word. My lord, do you wish for her to continue in her suffering? Or do you desire for her to consume this pill and recover immediately? Ultimately, Gu Yanzhao did not allow me to administer the medicine. He nearly fled in panic, thrusting me out of the villa. Shen Jiyue, leave. You are unwelcome here. The turmoil and guilt in his eyes were unmasked. He understood my implications and was aware of Lu Fui's intentions, yet he chose to deceive himself. I stood at the entrance, gazing at the tightly shut door, feeling an icy chill within. The deepest sorrow arises from a heart that has died. Perhaps this is the sentiment I now endure. I did not linger in pursuit. Instead, I turned and returned to the Hofu. From that day forth, Gu Yanzhao never returned to the estate, residing instead in the southern villa, devotedly guarding his moonlight. The entire capital reveled in my misfortune. The once favored madam of Zhenyuan Ho had fallen from grace, while the lord kept a cherished companion hidden away, becoming the latest gossip among the elite. Even when I returned to my family home, my father anxiously inquired whether he should intervene and confront Gu Yanzhao. I declined. Father, this is my own affair. I can handle it myself. My father regarded me, sighing. Jiyue, I know you have always been resolute. But, remember, the Shin family will forever stand as your support. Should anyone dare to bully you, I will not rest until I have avenged you, even at the cost of my own life. My throat tightened, nearly succumbing to tears. I had lived in a state of inexplicable fear from a young age. My father had engaged the finest masters to teach me martial arts, strategy, and the discernment of character. He told me that this world is treacherous, and human hearts are inscrutable. Only by becoming formidable could one survive. For a long time, I believed he referred to the deceit and treachery of the commercial realm. It was only on the eve of my marriage to the Hofu that he revealed the truth. The Shun family is not an ordinary merchant family. Our ancestors were the leaders of an organization known as the Qianji Pavilion during the previous dynasty. The Qianji Pavilion was immensely wealthy, with an intelligence network spanning the realm, thus inciting the ire of many. When the previous dynasty fell, the Qianji Pavilion also disbanded, yet the enmities persisted through generations. By my father's time, the Shun family had rehabilitated its image, emerging as prosperous merchants. However, those lurking in the shadows had never ceased their pursuit of vengeance. My father arranged for my marriage to the Jinyuan Hofu, partly because of its significant influence, which could serve as my sanctuary, and partly because he had uncovered that our greatest adversary seemed connected to a certain noble in the capital. He wished for me to remain in the safest place while he drew the snake from its hole. For 3 years, it appeared I was embroiled in a battle of wits against the various factions within the Hofu, yet in reality, I had been systematically identifying potential dangers in my own way. Those 50 assassins were not mere guards, they were the last elite of the Shin family, the Qianji guards. All my seemingly eccentric security measures were devised to counter the impending, fatal strike. Lu Fui and Gu Yanzhao were, to me, insignificant yet bothersome pawns in this deadly chess game. Upon returning from my family home, I had barely stepped through the door of the Huahua gate when Ada approached, his expression grave. "Miss, something has happened." He only ever addressed me as Miss in private or during urgent matters. My heart sank. "What is it?" "Last night, at the western corner gate, 2 brothers on night patrol were murdered, one swift stroke to the throat, clean and efficient." My steps faltered. "They have come. Have any clues been uncovered?" I inquired. "The assailant is skilled. No traces were left." However, Ada paused. "We found something in one of the brothers' fingernails." He opened his palm, revealing a small shard of broken jade, etched with half of an unusual pattern resembling a blooming black iris. My pupils constricted sharply. Black iris. That was the Shun family's most formidable foe, a killer organization with a lineage spanning over a century. Their emblem is the black iris. My father had mentioned in his letter that the leads he was pursuing eventually led to this organization. They had infiltrated the Hofu. I inhaled deeply, forcing myself to maintain composure. "Summon all brothers back. From today forth, the Hofu must be under strict surveillance, 24 hours a day, in 3 shifts. Not a single fly must be allowed to enter. Additionally, investigate who in the capital favors items adorned with this black iris pattern." "Understood," Ada acknowledged, departing to fulfill his orders. I stood in the courtyard, gazing at the overcast sky above, and for the first time, I felt a bone-chilling coldness. This game was no longer a trivial rivalry among the women of the inner chamber. It had escalated into a life-and-death struggle. That night, I made a decision. I penned a letter and had Chuanha deliver it to the southern villa. The letter contained but a single sentence: "Gu Yanzhao, I wish to divorce. Rather than wait for you and Lu Fui to conspire to drag me down, I would take the initiative and extricate myself from this mire." The Jinyuan Marquise, once a sanctuary, now appeared to be the most perilous target. I no longer required it. On the very night the letter was dispatched, Gu Yanzhao returned. He reeked of alcohol, kicked open my door, and stormed towards me, his eyes bloodshot. "Divorce? Shenjiwa, you shall not." He seized my shoulders with such force that I feared my bones might shatter. "Who do you think you are? You think you can marry and leave at will? Let me tell you, in this lifetime, you shall die as a ghost of the Gu family." I regarded his frenzied demeanor without resistance, calmly inquiring why. "What do you mean, why? Why won't you agree to the divorce? Do you not love Lu Fui? If I leave, it will only facilitate your happiness. Why won't you consent?" I had caught him off guard. The madness in his eyes diminished, replaced by a complex emotion I could not decipher. He opened his mouth, but no words escaped. Just then, a faint sound came from outside the window, as if something had sliced through the air. My expression changed abruptly, and without a second thought, I pushed Gu Yanzhao aside. "Be careful." A black feathered arrow grazed his cheek and, with a thud, embedded itself in the treasure cabinet behind me, its tail still buzzing. Gu Yanzhao stood frozen, his face white as a sheet. He reached out, his hand stained with blood. Had I not pushed him just then, the arrow would have pierced his throat. "An assassin!" Ada's voice rang out from outside, followed by the clashing of weapons. Gu Yanzhao finally came to his senses, staring at me in shock and confusion. I had no time to explain. A second arrow had already broken through the window. Aimed at him, I yanked him down, rolling on the ground to evade the attack. "Stay down, and don't move," I shouted, drawing a prepared soft sword from the hidden compartment of the cabinet. Gu Yanzhao watched in a daze as I unsheathed the sword, witnessing an intensity and resolve in my eyes that he had never seen before. He appeared utterly stunned. Perhaps he had never imagined that his wife, who only schemed and engaged in domestic strife, would possess martial prowess. The sounds of battle in the courtyard grew increasingly intense. I shielded Gu Yanzhao, retreating to a corner.
Who are you?
He finally asked. I offered no response, for a figure clad in black had already burst through the door, wielding a long knife that gleamed with a chilling light, aimed directly at us. The black-clad assassin's technique was brutal and cunning, each strike lethal. My soft sword, which favored a nimble style, found itself pressed back in defeat. To make matters worse, Gu Yanzhao stood helplessly behind me, unarmed and paralyzed by fear, serving as a living target. "Get under the table," I commanded. He snapped back to reality, scrambling beneath the 8 immortals' table. The assassin, seeing this, let out a cold laugh and intensified his assault. He seemed in no hurry to kill me, instead aiming to wear me down. I understood that Ada and the others outside were entangled, and I could not expect reinforcements anytime soon. I had to rely on myself. After exchanging blows for dozens of rounds, fatigue began to set in. A cut from the blade grazed my arm, instantly staining my sleeve with blood. The assassin seized the opportunity and swung a blade towards my face. I raised my sword to block, but with a resounding clash, the soft sword was knocked from my grip, clattering to the ground. It was over. I closed my eyes, bracing for death's arrival. Yet, the anticipated pain never came. I opened my eyes to find Gu Yanzhao, having emerged from beneath the table, wielding a heavy wooden chair, his entire body straining as he brought it crashing down on the assassin's back. With a resounding crack, the chair shattered. The assassin stumbled forward, turning back with an expression of disbelief and rage. He abandoned me, pivoting to strike Gu Yanzhao with his knife. "Yanzhao!" I cried out in alarm. Gu Yanzhao had no time to evade. Just at that critical moment, an arrow shot in from outside, accurately piercing the assassin's wrist. The long knife clattered to the floor. Ada and 2 Qianji guards rushed in, 3 swords thrusting from different angles into the assassin's body. He let out a muffled groan and collapsed into a pool of blood. He looked at me, black blood spilling from his mouth as he struggled to utter a few words. "The black kite shall not perish." Then his head tilted, and he breathed his last. The room fell into a deathly silence, leaving only the heavy breaths of Gu Yanzhao and me. My legs buckled, and I sank to the ground, the wound on my arm burning with pain. Gu Yanzhao rushed over, tearing off a piece of his garment, clumsily attempting to bandage my wound. "Don't move." His voice was hoarse, trembling slightly. "You've lost so much blood." I looked at him. His face was smeared with dirt, hair disheveled, eyes filled with fear and concern. Was this still the Gu Yanzhao who had always treated me with icy indifference? "Why did you save me just now?" I asked. His hands stilled, and he raised his gaze to meet mine. "I do not know," he replied softly. "I just know I cannot bear to see you die." My heart felt as though it had been gently nudged by something. Ado approached, handing me a vial of medicine. "Miss, are you all right?" I shook my head, accepting the medicine and tending to my wound. "What about outside?" 3 escaped, leaving 7 corpses behind. They were all death warriors, hiding poison in their mouths, leaving no survivors. Ada replied solemnly. "However, we did capture one of the leaders." My spirits lifted. "Where is he?" "In the woodshed." I stood up and said to Gu Yanzhao, "Stay here. Do not go anywhere." After saying this, I followed Ada towards the woodshed. Gu Yanzhao watched my retreating figure, hesitated, and ultimately followed. In the woodshed, a black-clad man was bound to a post, battered and bruised, yet his eyes remained fierce. I approached, tearing the black cloth from his face. It was a stranger.
Who are you?
"Why did you attempt to kill the Marquis?" I asked bluntly. He let out a cold laugh, turning his head away defiantly. I remained unfazed and pulled out the half of the broken jade pendant from my pocket. "The black kite, am I correct?" His pupils contracted. and a crack appeared in his erstwhile calm demeanor. I know not of what you speak. Still stubborn, are we? I smiled, tossing the pendant onto the ground. No matter. I have my ways of making you speak. I glanced back at Ada, who nodded and drew a uniquely shaped dagger from his waist. The man's face turned pale upon seeing the knife, and he began to tremble violently. The bone-stripping knife of the Qianji Pavilion. You are remnants of the Qianji Pavilion. Seems you know quite a bit, I said, squatting down to meet his gaze. Now, can you speak?
Who sent you?
His lips quivered, sweat pouring down his face as he clearly wrestled with his thoughts. Gu Yanzhao, standing at the door, was utterly stunned. Qianji Pavilion, Black Kite, assassination. These words struck him like heavy hammers, shattering his understanding of the world he had known for over 20 years. He looked at me, his eyes filled with unfamiliarity and inquiry. He realized he had never truly known me. I will speak. The man finally broke down. It was the madam. I was taken aback. The madam? Gu Yanzhao's great-aunt, the woman who had been bedridden after being exposed as a spy by me? It was impossible. Gu Yanzhao exclaimed in disbelief. Aunt, why would she do such a thing? The response was swift and revealing, because the matriarch's family is the largest financial backer of the Black Kite organization. We, Black Kite, have long sought to deal with the Shin family. The matriarch promised that if we helped her eliminate the marquis, allowing her son to inherit the title, she would assist us in locating the treasures hidden by the Shun family. The informant poured out the details like beans from a bamboo tube. It turned out that the matriarch's son, Gu Yanzhao's cousin, had always been looked down upon by the old marquis, Gu Yanzhao's father, due to his mediocrity. Ultimately, the title passed to the younger son, Gu Yanzhao. The matriarch harbored resentment and sought to eliminate Gu Yanzhao to reclaim the title. She had allied herself with Black Kite, intending to use them as a tool for her vengeance. Lu Fuyi was merely a pawn, a means to confuse us and disrupt the marquis. Her return to the capital, though seemingly coincidental, was orchestrated by the matriarch herself. She understood that Gu Yanzhao harbored lingering affections for Lu Fuyi, and with her return, discord would surely arise between Gu Yanzhao and me, creating chaos in the marquis, which would present her with an opportunity. I had previously discovered that the black market from which Lu Fuyi procured poison was also controlled by the matriarch's associates. Everything was connected, revealing a conspiracy that had been meticulously planned. Both Gu Yanzhao and I were her targets. Gu Yanzhao staggered back, leaning against the doorframe, his complexion as pale as parchment. He could not fathom that the aunt he had always regarded as benevolent was, in fact, the mastermind plotting his demise. The truth often wounds more deeply than a blade. Gu Yanzhao lingered at the door of the woodshed for what seemed an eternity, only departing in a daze when dawn broke. I chose not to intervene. Both he and I required time. I instructed Ada to deal with the captured informant and elevated the defenses of the marquis yet again. The matriarch, this venomous serpent, still lurked in the shadows, and I could afford no complacency. I had assumed that Gu Yanzhao and I would descend into a deeper stalemate. However, to my surprise, he sought me out the following noon. He had changed into fresh attire. Although dark circles still lingered beneath his eyes, he appeared composed. Standing before me, he remained silent for a prolonged moment before bowing deeply.
I am sorry, he said. The past was my folly.
I do not seek your forgiveness. I merely wish to convey that from this moment forth, I shall no longer allow you to face these tribulations alone. As I gazed at him, a tumult of emotions swirled within me. Could the return of the prodigal son truly be worth its weight in gold? Yet, the grievances I had endured, the rifts that had formed between us, could not simply be mended by a solitary apology. And then what? I inquired. What do you intend to do? He lifted his head, his eyes radiating an unprecedented resolve. We will draw the snake from its hole and turn the tables on them. I was taken aback. It seemed that overnight, this love-stricken marquis had finally matured. What is your plan? The matriarch's objective is the title and me, while the Black Kite's goal is you and the treasures of the Shin family. They may seem allied now, but their hearts may not be in sync, Gu Yanzhao analyzed. We can exploit this to incite discord among them. How do we do that? Lu Fuyi, he declared, naming the matriarch's pawn. Although that piece has been rendered useless, it still holds value. We can rescue her and send her to seek assistance from the matriarch. The matriarch, being inherently suspicious, will likely assume Lu Fu Yi is a probe sent by me, and in her self-preservation, she may choose to silence her. I observed him. The cold detachment with which he proposed to use Lu Fu Yi indicated he had genuinely moved on from that woman. A clever stratagem, I nodded, yet it was insufficient. Insufficient? Merely inciting their internal strife will not uproot the problem. As long as the Black Kite organization exists, we shall never find peace. I fix my gaze upon him. What I desire is to eradicate them completely. My plan was more ruthless and perilous than his. I intended to use myself as bait, feigning a complete rift with Gu Yanzhao, resulting in my expulsion from the Marquise. A forsaken girl, abandoned by her family and possessing secrets of treasure, would be the ideal prey for Black Kite. Once they made their move against me, I would be able to follow the trail back to their lair in the capital. Upon hearing my plan, Gu Yanzhao immediately opposed me.
No.
It is far too dangerous. One cannot reap the tiger's cubs without entering the tiger's den. I maintained a resolute stance. This was the fastest and most effective approach. But you, I interrupted, I am not alone. I have 50 Qianji guards at my disposal. Gu Yanzhao, you must focus on your responsibilities, safeguard the Marquise and protect the matriarch. The rest I shall handle. He regarded me, struggling with his thoughts for some time before finally nodding in agreement. Very well, but you must promise me to return alive. I promise you. The plan was swiftly set into motion. That very afternoon, news spread through the Marquise that the Marquis and his lady had engaged in a fierce argument over the matter of the assassin. In a fit of fury, I departed with Chun He and several guards, seeking refuge in one of the Shun family's external residences in the capital. No sooner had I left than Gu Yanzhao dispatched individuals to expel Lu Fu Yi from the southern villa, branding her a harbinger of calamity. When Lu Fu Yi was cast out, she was left destitute and in disarray. With no options remaining, she indeed sought out the matriarch. As we had anticipated, the matriarch feigned benevolence in taking Lu Fu Yi in, while covertly dispatching assassins to silence her that very night. Fortunately, Gu Yanzhao had already arranged for her protection. The assassins failed, and Lu Fu Yi narrowly escaped. This time, she was genuinely terrified. She finally grasped that she had merely been a pawn all along, expendable at any moment. She found the individuals Gu Yanzhao had positioned to assist her and divulged everything she knew about the matriarch, how the matriarch had contacted her, how she had instructed Lu Fu Yi to plot against me step by step, and how she had promised Lu Fu Yi a position as the Marquisate's primary wife once her scheme succeeded. With Lu Fu Yi as a witness, we now possessed irrefutable evidence against the matriarch. Meanwhile, my trap was also set. On the third day of my stay in the external residence, I sensed an increase in the number of watchful eyes around me. I knew they were from Black Kite, waiting for an opportunity. I was prepared for them to strike. The calm before the storm was the most excruciating. Chun, he was anxious every day, urging me to return to the Marquise. My lady, it is too dangerous. We should go back. The Marquis must be very worried about you. I ran my fingers over the soft sword beneath my pillow. Chun He, once the bow is drawn, there is no turning back. We must win this battle. The day of the decisive confrontation arrived sooner than I had anticipated. It was the 15th, a night of a full moon. I deliberately dismissed most of the guards, leaving only Ada and 4 other Qianji guards at my side, creating an illusion of laxity. As night fell, I sat in the study reading, while outside, the moonlight streamed like water, so still that I could hear my own heartbeat. Just past the hour of the rat, the wind began to stir. The bamboo grove in the courtyard rustled, masking the more subtle sounds. Ada stood behind me, gripping his knife tightly. Miss, they have arrived. Yes, I replied, setting down my book and proceeding according to plan. Dozens of shadowy figures, like specters, scaled the walls from all directions, silently converging on the main house. They did not attack immediately. Instead, they retrieved slender blowpipes from their sleeves, blowing soporific smoke into the room. I was prepared and immediately held my breath, covering my mouth and nose with a damp cloth. After a moment, sensing silence within the room, the leader of the black-clad figures gestured, and several rushed through the door. The instant they stepped into the room, The floor beneath them suddenly collapsed, revealing a deep pit filled with razor-sharp blades. The first few to charge forward screamed as they fell in. Simultaneously, countless poisoned crossbow bolts shot out from the walls surrounding the room. "It's a trap. Withdraw." The leader of the black-clad figures reacted with remarkable swiftness, issuing commands immediately. Yet it was already too late. Ada, accompanied by the Qianji guards, surged forth from the shadows, blocking their escape route alongside me. In the courtyard, the guards I had previously dispersed emerged from all directions, encircling the remaining black-clad men. It was akin to capturing fish in a barrel. Although the members of the Black Kite were formidable fighters, they soon found themselves at a disadvantage against our numbers. Amidst the fierce battle, my gaze fixated on the leader of the black-clad figures. His martial prowess surpassed that of the others, and as the adage goes, to capture a thief, one must first capture the king. I engaged him in a fierce duel, where blades clashed and danger lurked at every turn. His techniques bore a striking resemblance to those of the black-clad assassin who had attempted to kill Gu Yanzhao that fateful night. Yet they were executed with greater finesse and malice. "Indeed, the young lady from the Shen family possesses quite the skill," he remarked, his voice raspy and unpleasant. "Regrettably, today you must meet your demise." "That remains to be seen," I retorted with a cold laugh. We exchanged blows for 100 moves, neither side gaining the upper hand. Just as we reached a stalemate, a sudden blaze erupted outside the courtyard, illuminating the sky. "Water breach! Water breach!" Shouts rang out, causing a tremor of unrest among the encircled foes. Seizing the opportunity, the leader of the black-clad men feigned a strike and attempted to flee. How could I allow him to escape? With a flick of my wrist, I hurled my flexible sword, its blade coiling like a serpent to ensnare his ankle. He stumbled and fell to the ground. Ada immediately stepped forward, pressing his blade against the man's neck. "Stand down, or I shall slay him."
Ada bellowed.
Upon witnessing their leader's capture, the black-clad men ceased their movements. The flames drew closer, painting the sky of vivid crimson. I understood that this was no ordinary water breach. Gu Yanzhao was approaching. This was the signal we had agreed upon. Indeed, in the next moment, the gates were shattered open, and Gu Yanzhao, clad in military garb, led a tide of soldiers from the capital's garrison into the fray. "Lay down your weapons and surrender," he commanded. The assassins of the Black Kite were engulfed in despair, their fate sealed. I approached the captured leader and unmasked him. Beneath the mask lay a visage that was both aged and grotesque. The elder of the Black Kite. Ghostly fear? I recognized him from the portrait provided by my father. He glared at me with venomous hatred. "In the game of kings, the victor and the vanquished are decided. Do with me as you will." "I shall not take your life," I replied, meeting his gaze resolutely. "I will deliver you and those behind you to the emperor for judgment. Treason and collusion, harboring armies. What fate do you suppose awaits your esteemed lady and her cherished son?" "You," he spat, blood erupting from his mouth in fury. Gu Yanzhao approached my side, removing his cloak and draping it over my shoulders. "It is over," he murmured softly. I nodded in affirmation. Yes, it was indeed over. Aunt and her son, along with the entirety of the Black Kite's influence in the capital, were apprehended. Following interrogation, they confessed to all their crimes. The emperor's wrath was profound, decreeing the execution of Ant's entire clan, and the Black Kite organization was uprooted entirely. My father's long-standing peril was finally eradicated. Lu Fui, having turned state as witness, was spared the death penalty through Gu Yanzhao's intercession and returned to her homeland, never to set foot in the capital again. On the day when the dust settled, Gu Yanzhao, in the ancestral hall and before all the clan members, replaced the column I had wrapped in cotton with one of pure gold. "This column shall serve as a reminder for the Fofu," he declared, "to never be deceived by appearances and to always respect one's wife." He then approached me, solemnly presenting a divorce decree before all. "Jiyu, I have wronged you in the past. I have signed this. From henceforth, you are free." I looked at him. There was no reluctance in his eyes, only acceptance and respect. I accepted the decree, not even glancing at it, before tossing it into the nearby brazier. The paper curled in the flames, turning to ash. "I shall not leave," I stated firmly. He was taken aback. I met his gaze with a smile. This Ofu, which I have painstakingly preserved, why would I abandon it? Moreover, the columns, thresholds, and railings are crafted from fine brocade and pure silver. I have yet to recoup my investment. Gu Yanzhao regarded me with astonishment, then broke into a smile, reminiscent of a child, his eyes alight with relief. From that day forth, the Ofu remained as it was. Yet I no longer feared the annihilation of my family. My 50 Qianji guards became the most leisurely of individuals, their daily tasks consisting of accompanying me in tending to flowers, sipping tea, and basking in the sun. Gu Yanzhao refrained from taking concubines. He began to learn the management of the household, to care for me, and to awkwardly offer me a cup of hot tea when I awoke startled in the middle of the night. Our relationship lacked the fervor of passion, yet gradually warmed in the tranquility of everyday life. At times, he would inquire why I had once made such extravagant preparations. I would point to the columns still wrapped in cotton and the shimmering silver railings by the pond, telling him, "Because I am one who anticipates your anticipation." The end of the tale. Thank you for listening, and until we meet again in the next story.